Before you apply for another job, you need to hear this. The truth is, millions of professionals have lost their job this year and more coming. They're about to make the same mistake, and that is applying for another job in corporate America. They're going back to corporate thinking it's safe. How's that working out? What if I told you the so-called safe option is probably the riskiest option available? The truth of the matter is that this year alone, millions of people in the government sector, in the corporate sector, we're seeing GM, UPS, Amazon, we're seeing a ton of people losing their jobs, and it's only going to get worse with AI and with all the uncertainty in the world. You see, for decades, we've been told that the 9-to-5 job, the corporate job, the government gig, that those were the most safe, those were the stable, those were the ones with the most certainty. Well, ask the millions of people who have lost their jobs recently how stable, how certain, how risk-free that is. So the question is, why would you go back to that? Why would you not at least consider self-employment? Why wouldn't you at least consider business ownership? It actually could be less risky than going back into the corporate world right now. These folks got up and went to their jobs, their 9-to-5s, their corporate jobs, their government jobs, thinking everything was great. And through no fault of their own, they did nothing wrong. Today, they're unemployed. And again, the worst mistake they're going to make is start looking for another job with the same amount of risk and uncertainty, with the lack of control, with all the bureaucracy, with all of the red tape. Don't let that be you again. When I left corporate and started my own business, I learned something very, very valuable. It's not about running from risk. It's about choosing the right risk for you. You see, the truth is, having control over your own destiny is actually less risky than letting somebody else control your paycheck, your income, your hours of work, when you don't work, what you do when you work. All having control over your life, doesn't that sound amazing? And right now is the absolute best time to consider looking at franchising. You see, franchising, again, in my experience, I've owned businesses and I've been a part of the franchise world for many, many, many years. And the reason people look at franchising is because there is actually less risk than going out on your own. And right now, there's less risk owning a franchise potentially than going back to corporate. You have more control over your time. You have more control over your income. There are systems in place. There's a structure, there's training, there's support. You know, I've had the blessing over the years of working with a lot of people. I've worked with nurses, I've worked with military, I've worked with corporate, I've worked with CEOs, I've worked with, teachers, I've worked with lawyers, I've worked with all kinds of people who never thought that business ownership was even an option for them. And let me tell you, if you're used to working in a structured environment, military, if you're in the military, you are already built for business ownership. You see, franchising gives you support, it gives you systems, and it gives you the proven path to success. Now again, not all franchises are built the same. That's where I come in. I'm a franchise business coach, and my role, my job, my goal is to help transform people's lives. And what I do for you is 100% free. There's no risk involved at all. So if you've even considered, even for a second, going into business for yourself, let's connect. Let's talk. Let's find out what your likes are. Let's find out what your dislikes are. Let's find out what your risk tolerance is. Let's have a chat together to figure out if business ownership is for you. You've got nothing to lose. We can hop on the phone for a few minutes. We can assess some things, and then we can go through the process. And remember, my role is to be your guide. My role is to be your coach. My role is to help you through the process so that at the end of the day, you're more informed. You can figure out if this is the right path for you or not. And there's no risk, no harm, no foul. If you decide at the end of the day that it's still not for you and you want to go back to corporate risk, want to go back to government risk, that's okay too. Again, my job isn't to help you buy a franchise. My role is to educate you. My role is to teach you the ins and outs. My role is to guide you through the process. I've been lucky that I've been able to sit at every seat at the table. I've been a franchisee. I've been a franchisor. I've been in business development. I've been an international franchise development manager and leader. I've seen how franchising works and how it can benefit you. And like I say, I've had the blessing of working with all kinds of people from all walks of life, most of whom never ever owned a business in their past. You know, I talked with a nurse just this past weekend, and they own a glass repair business. They own a glass repair business. Now, as a nurse, she didn't really know anything about glass repair, let's be honest, but she knew about leading teams. She knew about structure. She knew about systems. Because again, when you own a business, it's not necessarily about you. If you can own a plumbing business without being a plumber. You can own an electrical business without being an electrician. You can own a business that can benefit you long-term, that can bring value to your family, to your life, that can give you control over your day-to-day. It can help you to spend more time with your kids. It can help you plan out your future better. You can keep it one size, you can grow it, you can expand it, you can scale it. You get to choose, and that is the biggest value right now when it comes to owning your own business. The risk is there. Like anything else, is there risk in franchise? Of course there is. Is there risk in business ownership? Of course there is. Is there risk going back to corporate? Absolutely. Is there risk going back to government? Absolutely. We've seen it. But here's the key. If the risk is equal, let's just pretend the risk is equal. And I actually think it's less risky to go into business for yourself, but let's just hypothetically say that the risk is equal. Because right now, again, talk to the millions of people who have lost their jobs in the last year. Ask them if ask them if there's no risk in working for corporate and working for government. There is risk. But let's just pretend it's equal. When you own your own business, you have more control. In fact, you have all the control. You get to decide where you work and where you don't work, when you work and when you don't work. You get to decide how much effort you put into it or how much you don't want to put. You get to decide who you hire, who you don't hire. You get to decide how you scale. You get to choose your income. You get all the control. You're not giving your control away to someone else who is controlling your time, your income, and your future. And you have no say when it comes to an end. Again, when you own a business, when you own a franchise business, at the end of the day, you're building an asset that could be worth 3, 4, 5, 10 times what you pay for it on the way in. And a good franchise system will help guide you and get you to the finish line so that you have a valuable asset so that in 10 years from now, if you decide you want to sell, you can make some real money off of the sale of that business. Maybe you're going to want to scale. Maybe you're going to want to own another franchise business. Maybe you're going to want to pass that down to your children. But you get to decide that, not somebody else. I get to work with some of the top franchise systems in all of North America. Let me help you decide if this is the right path for you. And like I said, there's no risk at all. Reach out to me, connect with me. All of my information is down below. We can connect. We can have a quick conversation to decide if you want to take the next steps at no cost. There's no cost to you for doing this. And at the end of the day, think about it. This opportunity, this choice that you're about to make, whether you go back into corporate, whether you go back into government, or if you choose to do some research, if you choose to get some education, if you choose to ask some questions about business ownership, it might change your life. I have seen lives change because of this. My entire life, I've helped people transform their lives, and this is no different. I want to help transform your life. I want to help transform your path for the future. I want to help you to take control of your life, and I want to help you to have the best future possible. So before you apply for another job, do yourself a favor. Contact me and let's explore if business ownership is the right path for you. It might just change your entire future because your next chapter doesn't have to start with a job offer. It can start with ownership.